Today's topic of conversation is something I've been working on for about 5 years now. And this is something that I've really been thinking about for a very long time. And the topic is 10 Renaissance ideas that will save America. Whenever I first started learning art history, I started realizing how much of the ideas that fostered all of these monumental achievements, how much of them were just so foreign to us today. How much of these really amazing ideas, it seems like we've lost them. And I just keep thinking over and over again when I'm looking and reading all these art history books, just how come we don't talk about these things today? These ideas are really useful. And they're not useful in a way where it's like, I think that they're going to make some sort of grandiose utopian idea to somehow save the world. I think it's more of they're useful in a practical, everyday sense. Like you could take this idea and apply it to your life, and even if nobody around you accepts or believes in these ideas, it'll still improve the quality of your own life personally. And those are really the ideas that actually do save a household, save a city, and save a country. It's stuff that improves the quality of the individual's life, because you can't disconnect the individual from the society at large. And you can't disconnect the society at large from the individual. And so I hope that these ideas are something that will resonate with you, because they're something that I've talked with so many of my friends and so many of my family and my mentors and art students and all of this. And it's just something that I think it's the most important thing that isn't being talked about today. So let's get into these ideas. First, I'm going to overview what the 10 ideas are. Then we can get into what exactly they all look like and the actual history and a little bit of stories of what happened, of why these ideas are so useful and what they looked like whenever they were actually played out in real life. And then at the very end, I'll summarize it all together about how do we actually apply these to our lives. I could give examples of how I applied this to my life, how my family's applied it to our life, and ultimately how these ideas, I believe, are going to save America. So here are the 10 Renaissance ideas that will save America. Idea number 1, a revival of classical antiquity. This is basically classical antiquity means ancient Greek and Rome, but it also means more than that as far as just like ancient societies, learning about what made these civilizations so great. And it's not just what made them so great, it's what happened that made them fall too. Because then you don't have to base whatever it is that you're doing based off of some sort of theory. You get to base it off of something that actually happened in history. So you have proof of concept. This is very important. So there's idea 1. The second idea is reunification of the East and the West. This is a big theme during the Renaissance, is trading ideas with distant countries and merging the differences. And this is really relevant today because I feel like in the West, we're very disconnected from what's happening in the East. We don't really understand, in America, we don't understand what's happening with China. We don't understand what's happening with Russia. We don't understand their culture. We don't understand their worldview. And I'm not saying that we need to adapt their worldview or we need to adapt their culture. I love American culture and I love American worldview. I think it's something that, we shouldn't dispose of. But it's also something that we're not going to have a good relationship with these foreign countries if we don't properly understand what it is that they're doing in the first place. And this is something that the Renaissance was really big on, was understanding the East from the Western perspective and using ideas from them from the East to help build up the West. So there's idea number 2. Idea number 3 is the rise of the merchant class. And I see this a lot today with the rise of the internet entrepreneur. I mean, you see people who are able to find new levels of wealth, not because of any sort of involvement with the previous system that's been, like go to school, go to college, all of that. But this idea is more of like, do it yourself. And this is something that really happened in Florence. Florence kind of was this melting pot, this cultural hub for entrepreneurs. And this leads into the next idea of the fall of the noble elite. All the way up to the time of the Renaissance, there was this concept of bloodline and nobility being passed down through your generations. And basically, if you weren't born a noble, you had no chance of making it out. You had no chance of breaking out of that social fabric that you were woven into, and you were just kind of expected to know your place. But then there was this new access to information that was happening in the Renaissance, where people were able to break out, and they were able to, there was a shift, a transfer of wealth, a transfer of power that happened, where people were able to become Renaissance men, and they were able to be born into these, born into really lowly positions in life, but still attain great wealth and power through these ideas that were happening, that were circulating at the time. And so at the time of the Renaissance, you see this massive transfer of wealth. You see this massive shift of power where these noble elites are losing their power. And this really, Florence is the perfect example of this, of where it became this revivification of a republic, where it's no longer a monarchy. It's no longer you have a position of power just because you were born into it. You have this position of power because your ideas actually were valuable and they contributed something. And this is a big game changer. And I feel like this is something that's really going to be happening in the new world that we're entering into now, where we have a new level of access of information through the internet, and we have a new level of being able to distribute these ideas and trade on a large scale that we've never been able to before. Like, for example, I could send Bitcoin over to someone across the world, and I don't have to rely on any particular type of banking system that we've been relied on for the past 100 or so years. And so these type of ideas of the rising merchant class and the fall of noble elite is something that really, the more you look into it, the more you realize there's a lot of ideas that we could take into our own personal lives that will really help optimize our function in day-to-day life. And it'll enable us to have much, much greater quality of life. And if that actually does improve your own personal life, it inevitably will start improving your culture and your society around you. Another idea number 5 is the family business. And this is something that was, this is a really foreign concept to most Americans today. But then the immigrants actually seem to get this better than the Americans, is that the family business, you have lots of kids, and a lot of times in America, you'll say, "Oh, you have lots of kids. That's going to be so expensive." But the immigrants, the immigrants who come to America, they don't think of having lots of kids as this is going to be something very expensive. They think it as something that, oh wow, we're actually going to be in a much better and stronger position for having lots of kids because our kids can help us out with our business and help us become more successful. So the family business was absolutely central to the ability to build such monumental achievements, and having that strong family, having a strong family unit is something that really started to take away the power from the elite at the time and start to put it back into the hands of the people. And it was through that strengthening of the family. And you could see this happening today with the weakening of the family, and then we're getting less and less powerful. People don't own their houses anymore. They don't own land anymore. And this owning the land actually even ties into idea number 6, which is your independent food supply. And this is something, it's more than just food supply, but that was the major theme of it all, was that you need food supply to be able to sustain a level of independence. And think about how often we're reliant on grocery stores, and those grocery stores are reliant on some sort of international trade of your food comes from a foreign country, it goes to the grocery store, and then it comes to you. And you basically, if the grocery store were to go out, or somehow the food supply chain were to be disrupted, you and your family would be totally starving. And this is something that, if you study history, it's a very new concept to rely on such a complex system to be able to survive with your food. I mean, that's just the basic needs of life. If you don't have food for your family, you're not going to survive. So I'm going to go into how exactly they thought about this independent food supply and how that practically carried out through not just on the individual level of a family, but through the city, a country, a nation, and all of that. And then we go into idea number 7, which is fortified cities. And this is just basically the structure of the outside of the city, how they regulated immigration, because immigration was a huge part of bringing ideas in, but it was also about keeping ideas out and keeping certain types of people out. And this is a good way to protect all of these ideas that were happening in these little cultural hubs where they built these amazing monumental achievements that people still travel all over the world to see. That having a wall around that and having a barrier in between you and the outside world You still have your gates where you're able to open up and trade with other people, but you also have walls to protect yourself and a certain way of fortifying the household and the city and the town to protect yourself in case things go bad. And so that's another thing we'll get into, is basically how do the cities protect themselves against all of the chaos that's happening in the world around them. And then when you think about how do they protect themselves, how do they supply for themselves, the next thing that comes up is how do they orient themselves? How do they bind themselves together? How do you orient the family towards a common goal? How do you orient a city towards a common goal? And this is idea number 8, is the centrality of the church. Is in the middle of all of these little towns, there was a church at the middle. And that was the thing that kind of held the whole community together. And even in the households, they would have a church, a chapel in the household too, where the family would go pray together too. And so, and this stands even outside of any one particular religious practice. This is an idea that the Renaissance really revived from ancient Rome and Greece, and even the societies and civilizations that came before that, is that you need a binding unit. You need an orientation mechanism to help bring people together towards a common good. So we're going to get into the centrality of the church and why taking the church out of the middle really causes a society and a household to decay, and why putting the church back in the middle really helps orient them all towards a common goal and bind them together and strengthen them. Idea number 9 is the polymath Renaissance man. And in today's day and age, you see a lot of specialism, where you're not really expected to trust someone if they go learn a lot of different disciplines and practices. Like if your doctor says, oh, I'm also a physicist and I'm also a mathematician and I'm also a painter, you would say, well, I don't trust that doctor as much because I kind of want a doctor that's just specialized in one particular area. But this was not the view of the Renaissance men. The view of the Renaissance men was to incorporate a large range of ideas and studies into your practice and synthesize that all into your particular area of specialization. And actually, the more areas that you specialized in, the more stronger your practice was considered. And there's a huge benefit. Now, there is some trade-offs here, and there's trade-offs in all of these things. And I want to get into that too. Like I said, I don't want this to be a utopian vision. I want it to be, I've thought about it a lot to where I want to present these ideas in a way where it's a practical, functional approach. It's not some sort of utopian idea. So I want to get into why exactly the polymath just basically means, like, you have a wide field of study and you study a lot of different things, and you kind of put that all into the one thing that you're working on at the time. So I want to talk about why exactly that works so well and what we could learn from that and what ways I've applied that into my own life and I've seen other people apply that and had great success, and how you could apply that in your own life, how we could apply that in our own lives as individuals and as both society as a whole. The last one and the final one is craftsmanship and artistry. This is idea number 10 of Renaissance ideas that'll save America. And this is, ever since the Industrial Revolution, we've just seen quality go down and down and down. And I remember growing up, hearing my dad complain about the quality of the tools. My dad built a lot of the furniture that was in our house, and he would point out how the quality of the tools used to be much higher, and then now with the more mass-produced things get, that they're actually lowering in quality. And I think this has even gotten 10 times worse than whenever I was a child, that the quality of things are becoming more and more and more disposable. And in the Renaissance, that was not a concept of this disposability of your items that you would have in your house, of the tools that you would use. You would want something that's going to last and that's going to stand the test of time. And so this idea of putting craftsmanship and artistry into all the things that you build, whether it be from maybe your mundane items, your everyday items and your tools, all the way to the structure of the city as a whole. And so the craftsmanship and artistry really is the glue that ties all of this together, is the attention of beauty and the attention of timelessness to all of these principles, because I think they all are actually extremely beautiful principles, and they're all principles that they all point towards a type of artistry and a type of attention to detail and a type of love for beauty that we just have lost today as a society and as a culture. And this is something that people are starting to become more interested in: natural materials, handcrafted things, and we're starting to realize how useless it is to go fill our lives with all these disposable things and just fill up all of the corners of the earth with trash and waste. And that it's not good for ourselves, it's not good for our soul, but it's also not good for the world around us. So that's a general overview of all of these ideas. And now we could get into what exactly the Renaissance was. Because before we get into each individual idea, we need to go over a brief history of what exactly led up to the Renaissance, of why it was so important. Because without understanding what was happening in the Renaissance or what led up to it, it's hard to really grasp how huge of a change it actually had on society, how massive and monumental of a change, and how profound of a mindset shift that was happening in the people who were living at this time. So we're going to go into just a brief introduction, a brief overview of what the Renaissance actually was, and then we're going to get into these 10 ideas that will save America.